This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Russia's assault on Ukraine. How does it affect that country's Jews and the nation of Israel? Plus, thousands of years ago, the Jewish people faced extinction at the hands of a Persian official. Today, they celebrate their deliverance, well aware that it could happen again. And an anti-Semitic party gains ground in Hungary. Why that country's Christians and Jews believe it could become even more powerful in the upcoming elections. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Today we're coming to you from our Jerusalem studio. Russian President Vladimir Putin boldly claimed the Crimean Peninsula belongs to Russia, taking it back from Ukraine. And with thousands of Russian troops poised on the Ukrainian border, many believe he's ready to take eastern Ukraine as well. For Ukrainian Jews and for the state of Israel itself, Russia's rumblings are ominous signs. Well, Joe Rosenberg is a best-selling author and former advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a friend, and he joins us now from our U.S. news studio. Joel, you've written a new book called The Auschwitz Escape. What are the lessons that it has for us today?
Well, one of the lessons is how do we as followers of Jesus Christ live in face of great evil? One of the stories I tell in this novel, it's a novel, but it's based on some of the true stories that happened during World War II, during the Holocaust, was a little town called Le Chambon. It was a town of about 3,000 people, mostly Protestants, in a country of mostly Catholics. The pastors, the evangelical Christian pastors in Le Chambon, saw Jews coming to their doorsteps asking to be rescued from the Hitler regime and began to protect them. And they, in fact, ended up rallying the entire town of 3,000 people to end up rescuing more than 5,000 Jews, mostly children, during these horrific years. So one of the questions, one of the legacies and lessons I think we need to learn is, will we stand up on the Word of God and His command to love our neighbors as ourselves in the face of great evil?
Now, Nazi Germany posed a threat to the Jews then. Now Iran poses a threat to the Jews now. And I understand you did a poll about Iran's intentions. What were the results you found?
We found that 80% of Americans fear that if Iran does in fact acquire nuclear warheads, that their intention is to annihilate the Jewish people and bring about a second Holocaust. That's the language that we tested, and it was 80%. We also then tested, well, are you concerned about Iran hitting us here in the United States? And we found that more than 70% of Americans fear a nuclear Holocaust if Iran gets the bomb.
Yeah, I know that Iran calls Israel the little Satan, but he calls the U.S. the great Satan. But right now there's negotiations going on in Vienna with Iran by the six powers, the P5+1. What do you expect to come out of those talks?
I'm not optimistic. I hope, we try to hope for all things. But at this point, I'm deeply concerned. You've got the President of the United States, along with the P5+1. They've really stepped back from the sanctions regime. They've been easing up on the sanctions in the first deal. So Iran continues to enrich uranium. Why exactly are we making it easier on Iran when we're not taking away their capacity? Can the world be trusted to take decisive action to stop Iran? Or will Israel have to take action ultimately themselves?
You know, Joel, you also tweeted recently that 76 years ago this week, Hitler took over Austria, and now Putin is taking over the Crimea. The historical parallels are striking. What do you see Putin doing next?
Yeah, this is extraordinary. You're right. 76 years ago this week was the Anschluss. This was the Nazis sent military forces into Austria and then sort of orchestrated a referendum in which 99% of the people of Austria then said, yes, we want the dictator Hitler to run our lives. Now you've got Putin sending military forces into Crimea, southern Ukraine. He's orchestrated a referendum. He got a 97% almost vote. And I'm not saying Putin is Hitler, but Vladimir Putin is finding a world full of Neville Chamberlains. He sees weakness, indecision in the White House and in Europe. Putin wants to rebuild the glory of Mother Russia, in part by reclaiming territory and Russian nationals who now fall outside of the current Russian borders because of the implosion of the Soviet Union. Nobody is stopping him. And I think when a dictator is moving this way, and doesn't see anyone with the strength of resolve to stop him, he may take more.
Yeah, I would think so. You know, Joel, you've written a lot about prophecy. Do you see prophetic events possibly unfolding in the Ukrainian crisis? And how would you expect Christians and advise Christians to be responding to all the turmoil in the world today?
Well, I want to be cautious. You know, Ezekiel 38, 39 describes a dictator rising in Magog, which ends up proving to be Russia, you know, building an alliance with Iran. Is Putin doing that? Yes, he is. You know, he begins to assemble a coalition of military forces, ultimately to surround Israel. We haven't seen that yet, but we certainly are seeing a dictator, a thug, a czar rise in Russia. Christians need to be praying for the people of Ukraine, praying for the people of Georgia. We need to be strengthening our brothers and sisters, many of whom are endangered. I know CBN has studios, I believe, in Kiev. Mm-hmm. So we got to stand with our Christian brothers. We need to be preaching the gospel in Russia, in Ukraine, all over the world. We are in very dark times, and they are getting darker. And the leaders of our leaders are failing us in many ways. And I think the church has to say, listen, we can't wait for the leaders of the world to do the right thing. We need to preach the gospel, make disciples, teach our young people particularly how to walk with Christ in the midst of dark times. Because I think as we go deeper into the last days, things are only going to get worse, not better.
Excellent word, Joel, and thanks for all your insight, and look forward to seeing you here in Israel.
Thank you so much, Chris. Great to be with you.
Jews around the world celebrated the holiday of Purim this week. In the book of Esther, the Bible records the story of how God delivered them from an evil plot to destroy them. Some say the story has similar overtones today. Julie Stahl has that story.
These children in the southern Israeli city of Sderot are out to celebrate Purim, even though they were under rocket attack just a few days ago.
It's about fun, it's about smiling all day long, it's about being something you're not.
At the Western Wall and in synagogues, the biblical book of Esther is read from a scroll. The Bible says Haman, a wicked advisor to King Ahasuerus, conspired to kill all the Jews throughout the ancient kingdom of Persia on one day. But Queen Esther, who unknown to the king was Jewish, and her cousin Mordecai exposed the plot and turned the tables. So the Jews were victorious over their enemies, and that's what they celebrate at Purim. In that spirit, Sderot residents took to the streets.
We're very happy that it's very quiet right now, and we have the chance to go out and see all the costume, and we love Sderot.
The purpose of the rockets is to scare us, and everything we do is not to let it scare us.
Just a few days earlier, Iranian-backed Islamic Jihad launched dozens of rockets at Sderot and communities nearby.
I'm making events here 12 years in the city. Never did we cancel one event, not because of the Qassam.
No, it's a holiday. We celebrate it if we have rockets or not without rockets. It's our holiday.
We asked Sderot residents if they see a connection between the story of Purim and today.
Yeah, president of Iran, and Purim is happening in Persia, so maybe there's some connection, but still here. Just like in Purim, we're here and we're fine.
I think the connection is to try to forget our daily routine here. Still have this nice celebration here.
Always in every generation, there arises one who wants to kill the Jews, and then the creator of the world overturns it all.
Happy Purim holiday. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Sderot.
From the streets of Sderot to the streets of Jerusalem, this week thousands of runners from around the world came to take part in the Jerusalem Marathon. Many came to experience what it's like to literally run through history. Some 26,000 runners gathered for the 4th annual Jerusalem Marathon. 2,500 of them came from 55 nations to run the race.
We're going to see the beauty of the city, the most beautiful city in the world.
The marathon course runs throughout Jerusalem, but the highlight for many is the opportunity to run through Jerusalem's old city here at the Jaffa Gate.
For me, it's a dream come true as a marathon runner, somebody that understands how marathons lift cities, showcase the city of Jerusalem. So it's a wonderful day.
There are 3 main races: a 10-kilometer, a half marathon, and a full 42-kilometer, 26.2-mile marathon. There's also an 800-meter half-mile race to raise money for the needy. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat came up with the idea for a marathon. He also runs in the race.
Having such a strong, wonderful, referenceable international marathon, we're actually becoming on the short list of marathons that all want to do at least once in their lifetime.
The course is challenging since Jerusalem is, as the Bible says, a city set on a hill.
This is my first and only marathon. The one place I'll do it is Jerusalem. It's supposed to be the hardest and it's supposed to be also the best fun.
These Americans came with a message.
I want to spread this message all over the world.
I am here to run on holy ground, 26.2 miles, 42 kilometers.
I wish I can run barefooted. Yes, I have to respect this land. It's a holy land and I love it dearly.
I am running barefoot. Why? Because I will be in good company with many other holy people that have traversed these streets and these hills barefoot.
Some have a cause.
And we are raising money for UCLH, Cancer Research, in London.
Others will take a new message back when they go home.
What we used to get is from the news. Israel or Jerusalem is quite a dangerous place, but after we visit, I think it's a very good and nice city. We will spread out the message to our friends that Israel or Jerusalem is a safe place to visit and a very nice view, nice city.
Up next, Israel strikes a Syrian outpost after an attack on its border. This as the deadly civil war enters its third bloody year. Those stories and more in our weekly news wrap-up.
Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm George Thomas with your weekly news wrap-up. In a move that could have serious implications for Israel, Moscow is threatening to soften its stance in nuclear talks with Iran. Russia's deputy foreign minister said the country might have to raise the stakes in response to the actions by the U.S. and European Union. The threat is retaliation for sanctions imposed against Russian officials over the Ukrainian crisis. Russia and the U.S. are part of an international coalition negotiating with Iran over its nuclear programs. Israel is gearing up for a military strike this year on Iran's nuclear facilities. That according to the Israeli daily Haaretz. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered Israel Defense Forces to spend nearly $3 billion for a possible military strike in coming months. The U.S. and 5 other world powers meet this week for a second round of talks in Vienna with Iran over its nuclear program. Israeli leaders compare those talks to a Persian bazaar where Iran delays for time while continuing its nuclear program. Israeli warplanes unleashed a series of airstrikes on Syrian military posts this week. The strikes are a response to a roadside bombing in the Golan Heights that wounded 4 Israeli soldiers. All this takes place as Syria's civil war enters its third year. What started as protests against the Assad regime has become what some are calling the worst humanitarian crisis in modern times. My colleague John Waggy has that story.
Early in 2011, while seeds of the Arab Spring were germinating, signs of Syrian uprisings, protests against the country's dictator, President Bashar Assad, began to appear on YouTube. Those protests would mushroom into a full-scale 3-year civil war with staggering costs. More than 140,000 dead and at least a third of the country's 23 million people forced to flee their homes. Millions of refugees are now living in camps in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Syria is rated one of the world's most dangerous places for children, and thousands have been murdered. The war also helped produce chaos in U.S. foreign policy.
To use potential weapons of mass destruction on civilian populations crosses another line, and that is going to be a game changer.
One result, reduced U.S. influence in the Middle East and allied skepticism that America will make good on its commitments. Assad resurfaced in Damascus this week, a sign he's not overly worried by threats from Europe and Washington. In the meantime, radical Islamists in the Syrian opposition, some tied to al-Qaeda, make life dangerous for Christians and other Syrian minorities. They held a group of Orthodox nuns hostage for months, recently letting them go after receiving a ransom. The rebels also have attacked historic Christian towns, targeting churches and monasteries. In the town of Rock, they're forcing Christians to convert to Islam, pay a tax, or, quote, face the sword. Many Christians have died, and thousands, such as Nicholas George, have fled.
Because of the fighting, everyone in my area was stuck inside their house. They could not buy anything. It was very dangerous for me even to try to open my shop.
Diplomats meeting in Europe have tried to forge an agreement between the warring factions, but plumes of smoke rising in Syrian cities signal that the end to the crisis is not at hand.
If you were, I think, a Christian father in Syria looking at your children and their future, you know, I think you'd want them to get out, and not just now for safety, but for the future too. I think you'd be saying, go to Europe, go to America.
John Waggy, CBN News.
Coming up, anti-Semitism on the rise in a country where Jews were once shot and shoved into the Danube River. The growing threat of the third largest political party in Hungary.
70 years after the Holocaust, anti-Semitism still lurks in Europe. It's especially bad in Hungary, where an anti-Semitic political party is growing more powerful. And that has observers concerned about upcoming elections there. Dale Hurd reports from Budapest.
A memorial to the Jews of Budapest, who were rounded up during World War II and told to take off their shoes before being shot and pushed into the Danube. Hungary's Jews are fearful again because of a return of anti-Semitism. This is the kind of political ad that tapped straight into the Hungarian psyche.
Bankoknak mindent szabad. Míg dolgozunk, ezek csak lopnak. Politikus bűnözőknek mindent szabad.
It's an ad for Jobbik, now the third largest party in Hungary, and some say a possible long shot to rule Hungary in a coalition government someday. A Jobbik member of parliament has called for a list to be drawn up of all the Jews in government because he deems them a security threat.
It's clear that Jobbik's basic principles are very similar to the Nazis, especially considering the so-called Jewish problem. And I need to stress that there is a part of the Hungarian society that has a secret sympathy for Jobbik.
Jobbik started a militia, the Magyar Garda, but it was outlawed. Jobbik claims it was a service organization, but it looked like Aerocross, a Nazi-era party that killed thousands of Jews. It's an open question as to whether Hungarian society is getting healthier or getting sicker.
Sadly, I have to say sicker because of growing intolerance, because of growing poverty.
We asked one of Hungary's leading political consultants, Viktor Szigetvári, if Jobbik could end up in a governing coalition someday, as some predict, or if they're too radioactive for other parties.
They are radioactive, but it is possible that we might have a minority government created after the 2014 general elections. And in this context, it will be interesting what role Jobbik will play.
Jobbik turned down our request for an interview, telling us, "We do not want to help you on the issue of anti-Semitism. Jobbik is dealing with much more important problems right now. The sellout of soil to foreigners and to oligarchs close to the government, the corruption scandals, the chaos in education, and the catastrophic state of public safety." Jobbik repeatedly denies that it is anti-Semitic. On its English-language website, it seems to disavow some of the very positions its leaders have spouted publicly. Jobbik says it does not deny the Holocaust, but it also does not like Israel. Steiner and others told us Jobbik should be considered very dangerous, and even if they never rule Hungary, critics say they're a legally elected party, spreading dangerous ideas. But Jobbik seems to be only a symptom in a nation that is still clinging to old-fashioned anti-Semitism. Dale Hurd, CBN News, Budapest.
For more on how Christians in Hungary are taking a stand against Jobbik, visit Dale's blog, Hurd on the Web. You can find it at our website, cbnnews.com. Coming up, even under the threat of attack, Israelis celebrate an ancient holiday with a modern-day meaning. The celebration of Purim is especially meaningful to Israelis here who live under the threat of Iran's nuclear program. Here's more reaction from the residents of Sderot with Julie Stahl.
What are you celebrating here today?
We're celebrating Purim with the kids here.
Purim. Yeah, it's a nice holiday. Everyone dressed like something different.
Purim is a holiday of the Jews. They wanted to kill all the Jews in one day, and instead everything was overturned. The situation changed and everybody lived, so we celebrate this.
We need to celebrate because they stopped Haman from killing all the Jews.
It's a holiday of costumes, happiness, fun, and spending time with family.
What's the meaning of Purim for you?
The meaning? My birthday.
Last week, when the rockets were falling down, did you think they would be celebrating this week?
Absolutely. We had no doubt that this event was going to happen either way. The people here don't let the rockets bother their everyday life.
I think so, yeah. I mean, Sderot's strong.
Were you afraid to come to Sderot today?
No. I mean, like, today wasn't even a consideration. I mean, they need us, we will come, and we live here, and it means we have to face whatever the city throws at us.
They're still trying to destroy our lives, and we're happy that we actually be here and celebrate, even though they send the bombs from Gaza.
They're always trying to destroy us, but they never succeed.
There's always a connection. Everything that happened then also happens today.
With God's help, everything will be overturned for the good of the Jews, and everybody that wants to rise up and destroy the Jews, the Creator of the world will destroy them, and the Jews will win in the end.
Do you think God is watching over Israel?
I am myself not a great believer, but I guess people believe that God's watching over us. Maybe it does.
We need the army. God, it's very good to think that He protects us, but we have to do something.
So what about the cow? Tell us about the cow.
Cow.
So what do you think about Purim? Are you having fun? Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
As you can see, Purim is a very special holiday here in Israel. Well, that's it for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time right here in Jerusalem.